All right, let's just jump right in. We are going to unpack one of the most incredible, just insane stories in modern business history, the rise of Nvidia.
Usually you start at the beginning, but for this story, we're going to flip that. Let's start at the end, because wow, you have to see where this all leads.
So picture this. October 29th, 2025, Nvidia hits a number no company has ever even dreamed of, a market capitalization of $5 trillion. I mean, look at that. That's a 5 with 12 zeros. $5 trillion.
So that's the big question, right? The $5 trillion question. How on earth does a company that almost died, not once but twice, become the most valuable company on the planet?
Well, to get that answer, we've got to rewind. And the story doesn't kick off in some fancy boardroom or a Silicon Valley garage. Nope, it starts in a booth at a Denny's diner in San Jose.
I mean, just look at this comparison. It's night and day. It's absolutely wild. Back in '93, they're literally sketching out ideas at a Denny's with $600 in the bank. The founder, Jensen Huang, he even said their chance of success was, and I quote, approximately 0%. And now, a $5 trillion monster with something like 80 to 90% of the entire AI market. The journey from A to B is what this is all about.
But man, that journey was anything but smooth. It was brutal. Their very first chip, the NV1, total flop. Then, this huge deal they had lined up with Sega just falls apart, and suddenly they've only got 9 months of cash left. 9 months! Jensen had to lay off half his people and make this gut-wrenching decision. Stop trying to fight the industry standards and just join them. That one pivot, that single decision, saved the company from going under.
So, okay, they survived. But what was the thing that turned them from just a survivor into this? You'd think it was some revolutionary new chip, right? Nope, it was software. It's called CUDA, and what it did was genius. It basically let developers use Nvidia's powerful gaming GPUs for all sorts of heavy-duty computing, not just making games look pretty. But here's the kicker, the real masterstroke. They made it proprietary. So if you learned to code on CUDA, you were pretty much locked into using Nvidia hardware. It was a brilliant trap.
But, and this is so important, this was not an overnight win. Not even close. Just look at this timeline. They start working on it in 2004. They ship it in 2007 to crickets. Nobody wanted it. For years, Wall Street analysts were just destroying them, saying they were burning cash on this useless project. It took until 2012, 8 years after they started, for the bet to even begin to pay off. That's when this AI model, AlexNet, used CUDA and basically lit the fuse for the entire AI revolution. We're talking about a 10-year gamble.
And that's why this analyst quote just nails it. When you buy Nvidia, you're not just buying a chip, you're buying into the whole CUDA ecosystem. Think of it like Apple's App Store. It's this massive, sticky ecosystem, a moat really, that is just incredibly hard for anyone else to compete with.
Okay, so they placed this massive, patient bet. How did it finally cash in? Well, it paid off in the most spectacular way imaginable, right when generative AI had its big iPhone moment.
The second ChatGPT dropped, it was like a starting gun for a global gold rush. Everyone needed AI compute, and they needed it yesterday. And just look at what that did to their revenue. I mean, come on. They were totally flat in fiscal 23. Then boom, up 126%. And then another 114% the year after. This kind of growth is just not something you see, ever.
So where did all that money come from? Was it gaming? Nope, it was all from one place, the data center business. Look at this bar chart. It goes from $15 billion to $115 billion in 2 years. That's a more than 7x jump, all driven by the insatiable demand for AI.
And this chart here, this donut chart, really puts it all into perspective. In just 2 years, the company completely changed its DNA. It went from being a gaming company, I mean, that's what we all knew them as, right? To being a pure-play AI infrastructure company. Data center went from just over half their business to almost 90%. A total transformation.
Okay, but let's be real. When something grows this fast, this high, it's going to attract some doubters, some bears. So what are the cracks in the armor? What could actually bring this whole thing crashing down? And if you look closely, there are some pretty big ones. First off, almost 2/3 of their sales go to just 4 customers. 4! That's a ton of risk packed into a tiny basket. Then there's this weird circular financing question. where Nvidia invests in startups that then turn around and spend that same money on Nvidia chips. It raises some eyebrows. Third, you've got geopolitics. The US restrictions on exports to China have already sliced their market share there in half. And maybe the biggest risk of them all, they are completely dependent on one single supplier, TSMC, to make their most advanced chips. That is a massive single point of failure.
And it's not just random people worried about this. You've got guys like Michael Burry, the big short guy, raising red flags. He's basically saying some of this financing stuff looks a lot like what was happening right before the dot-com bubble burst. Now, for their part, Nvidia says that's not what's happening at all, but it's a shadow that kind of hangs over the story.
But even with all those risks, Nvidia isn't hitting the brakes. Not at all. In fact, they're speeding up. They're on this insane one-year cycle now, basically trying to make their own best-selling products obsolete every single year.
So they're already shipping the next big thing, Blackwell, which is a giant leap for what's called inference, basically how fast an AI can give you an answer. But get this, they've already told us what's coming after that, the Vera Rubin platform in 2026 and then Feynman in 2027. Each one is promising these huge exponential jumps in power. At this point, they're really only competing with themselves. And that kind of brings us full circle to one last big thought. When you look at this whole journey, from that Denny's booth to $5 trillion, you start to wonder, is the real bet here even on Nvidia? Or is it really a bet on AI itself? Because if artificial intelligence actually delivers on all of its world-changing promises, then yeah, Nvidia's position looks pretty untouchable. But if the AI hype train runs out of steam, well, then no moat in the world is going to be big enough to matter.